Hello, and welcome to Journey to SEA 2024. This is our first live for the new term, and I know it's not the new term yet, but we're in back to school mode, so technically it's the new term. Sorry to keep you waiting. I realize I'm a bit late. I wanted to show you so many things today. When I got started and I started putting things together and I looked up, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's after 11. So thank you for those of you who are able to tune into the live. Let me just check on in the group. That's SEA, the Peaceful Approach. Uh, right, just letting everybody know that I'm on and yeah, apologizing for being a bit late this morning. So, all right. So, welcome. If you're here live, I really do appreciate it, and I look forward to getting into it, giving an update, and sharing with you. Like I said, I have lots and lots of stuff to share with you. But of course, if this is your first live and you don't know who I am and you don't know what this is about, but you saw it in the group or on a page and you're checking in, let's get started with, sharing all about who I am, what I do, why I do it, and how it can benefit you, especially when it comes to creative writing. So that's all part of the presentation. So let me share slides and get started with you. Share slides, share screen. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to share screen this morning. All right, awesome. So that's the slide. Now we're looking at what is called a multisensory approach to teaching creative writing. And so what I thought I'll do this morning is not only share a little bit about who I am, my background, and so on, but really get into some details about what I do and how I do things. Because I approach teaching creative writing slightly differently from many teachers. I know lots of teachers use activities and so on in their writing, but my approach takes what we call a multisensory approach, and the entire program is designed not only to make writing engaging and fun, but also to cover all the different aspects of creative writing so that students who are having challenges can engage with the writing more effectively. And when we talk multisensory learning, well, I'm going to get into that in a little bit, but the whole idea is about making creative writing accessible to all students. And that's the whole agenda, because I truly believe, as the intro video said, I truly believe that learning about writing can be fun, and right now it's really not so much fun for too many people. All right, so let's take a look at what we're going to cover. So this is what I'm hoping to share with you. Personal introduction, a little bit about multisensory learning, what it looks like in a creative writing classroom, a little bit about what my classes are like, and we're going to take a look at some of the resources that I have, and I'll explain to you how you can use them and how they're going to benefit you. And then, of course, we are in our journey to SEA, and at this point, it's beginning to get into crunch time. And so if you haven't started like detailed practice and so on just yet, and you're not sure where to begin, what to do, then I'm going to go through a study schedule with you that's going to help you organize stuff. And of course, the study schedule is available for download. So if you want to get a copy of that, you can, and a couple other things. All right, so let's get started, because I do still want to, I have to close off at 12 or thereabouts, might go a little over, because I don't want to keep you too long today, but I do have quite a lot to give you. And of course, the video is being recorded so that you can go back to it in the archives and go back to the information as needed. All right, so a little bit about who I am and some of my background. I know I tell everyone that I'm a creative writing specialist, and it sounds just like a label, but I chose that simply because that is my main area of focus, creative writing. I do cover comprehension and grammar for my one-on-one students and for certain other groups, but really and truly, I am a writing instructor. And I look at writing from multiple perspectives. And as you can see from my brief bio here, I do engage in quite a few things and lots of multisensory things, which we're going to be really getting a lot more into today. So, creative writing tutor, author coach, developmental editor, and yes, I'm obsessed with creative writing instruction because I think, for the most part, many teachers are really struggling and parents are struggling, which, when the adults struggle, the kids struggle. So we really have to, address what's happening in the creative writing classroom. So that's my agenda. That's my reasoning behind, engaging with creative writing the way that I do. But I didn't always teach primary school level. In fact, there was a time if you had asked me, about teaching primary school level, I would have laughed in your face, ah ha ha, no, no, never, never me. But then now here I am, because here's what happened. When In my experience, I've taught university classes. I worked at University of the Southern Caribbean for a long time, and at the university, I taught communication and writing classes. So English composition, communication skills. I did communication in the classroom, group dynamics, interpersonal communication, intercultural communication, because I'm really fascinated with how people communicate. And writing is a form of communication. And because of my skill in writing, I decided to, go into that area. Now, you'd also notice film production, photography, graphics. And I I love to work with images, photos, presentations, and those kinds of things. And this is where a lot of the multisensory work comes in for me. I've done photography. I used to be a professional photographer doing weddings and those kinds of things. But my real passion is teaching and getting people to love and integrate and really work with words. And so the classes that I do, I've found a way to integrate all of my passions into teaching creative writing, which is where the multisensory aspect comes in. Now, what happened with me is that while teaching university, whether it was communication skills or academic writing or any of those programs, I always had students in my class, and these are adult students in my class, who would tell me things like, Miss, that's easy for you to say because you could write. Miss, you have a degree in English, that's why you're writing like that. Miss, not everybody could write like you. And, those kinds of things, it bothered me for some time because two things. One, the assumption is that people are born writing well. Unless you're a savant, that doesn't happen. The average person, like me, worked really hard at the skills that I have right now. And it's not like I was born knowing to write the way I write. I read a lot when I was a child. I was one of those kids who, I have a lamp in the corner of my room, and when everybody's sleeping, the lamp is over my head, and there's the book, and I'm squinting because, and yeah, I wear glasses now, so that's not a good thing to do. Forgot my glasses home, otherwise I would have shown you. But yeah, you end up wearing glasses when you do things like that. But I loved words that much. And honestly, what I loved more was the stories. So now that I do reading and writing for a living, I don't read as much for pleasure, but I watch movies and programs because I love stories. And, it bothered me to hear people say, Miss, you good at it. That's why you can say that. But how did I get good at it? I practiced and I learned and I listened and I practiced some more and then I practiced some more. And that's what I'm trying to get everybody to understand. Writing is a form of communication. Everyone can write well. Why? Because there are principles and skills that you could learn, and once you practice them, you would be a good writer. I mean, I'm not saying you'd be the next Stephen King or, any of those prolific writers, but your writing would be good, acceptable, and interesting for those who are reading it. And whether you're going into like the nonfiction, your writing will be interesting and people will want to read it. So the idea is not that writing is one of those, major things that is like a thing that you're born with or not. The idea is that everyone can learn to write well. And that's what my programs are about, teaching students that everyone can write well. And so I got back into teaching when my daughter had some challenges when she did SEA. And she did SEA in 2020 during the lockdown. So you can imagine how crazy that time was. And what made it even more crazy was that she struggled with writing. And I mean, you can imagine at some point I did feel a bit embarrassed. I'm a writing instructor. I've been teaching writing for decades. And yeah, don't try to calculate my age. I've been teaching writing for decades. And here it is, my daughter is struggling with writing. And we all know how important that creative writing component of SEA is. And what hurt even more is that I didn't recognize it at first. Now, she's my second daughter. My first daughter, she loved reading, and there's a 5-year gap between them, so we had she had 5 years of me all to herself and that kind of thing. And at the time I was part-time and different things, so I had the time to really give her the energy. And I because she loved reading and because she read and we had discussions and different things, I never really had to check in with her work. And so, she passed for prestige school, and she got, when she did CSEC, she got one in English and all those kinds of things. So that's what people expect from me and my kids because I am a writing instructor. But the trouble is, I focused on writing the typical way, and some kids learn the typical way. Like my first daughter, she loved words, she read, and she was fine. But my second daughter, she was more the active type. Um, and I mean, you're not seeing me anywhere in that photo with the snake because I was at the other end of the classroom. I didn't even take the photo because I wasn't getting that close. But the thing is, with her, she was one of those hands-on, she has to feel it, move and do in order to really learn effectively. And so she struggled at her first school. I transferred her. She really struggled at her first school because they were really on the academics, and that didn't work well with her. And so I transferred her, and there's nothing wrong with the school. It's just that she learned differently. Um, and I didn't know what to do at the time to support her in her current environment. So I moved her. And then when she moved to the new school, she was much more comfortable, but she still struggled. And I didn't notice in standard 3, which is where, by the way, when you're really looking at getting into that SEA journey, your SEA journey starts the moment the child begins school. However, if you allow them to be kids and enjoy their lives, just covering the basics, standard 3 is when you really ought to begin buckling down and being a lot more intentional about what's happening if you haven't done it before. So I know most of you who are listening are either working with students in 4 or 5 already, but if you have younger children, pay attention. If you have friends with younger children, let them know. You really ought to, you really ought to, have a plan. Most of us don't. I didn't in the beginning. And that's why I'm really taking the time today to talk about these things, because I really want for those of you who are listening to get it and to share with others, so that really help the children. So somebody put a comment, familiar with kids who learn differently. Yeah, it's really a challenge when you have kids who learn differently. Now, my daughter isn't diagnosed with anything, but knowing what I know now, I'd say she is ADHD to a T. But she was never diagnosed because we kind of did a thing and stuff happened, so we never really paid attention. And ADHD sometimes looks differently in girls. And so, she wasn't as hyperactive and very, very active. So we never really thought of having her diagnosed and so on. And on top of that, right now she's wearing glasses as well because she has issues with her eyesight. That, all of these things, because she found coping mechanisms, she kind of floated under the radar for some time. But when I realized it, I got it sort of at the ending of standard 4, and so we worked a lot behind it, and that's when I started really exploring what is multisensory learning and how it can help students. And the more I read about multisensory learning, I found things about math, I found things about reading. We have this a whole lot. In fact, multisensory learning is one of the strategies used to work with students who have ADHD, autism, and dyslexia, among other challenges. It is part of the focus for students with special needs. But like my daughter, never diagnosed, she would have thoroughly benefited if I had started a lot earlier. But I didn't know at the time, which is why, like I said, I am trying to scream it from the mountaintop so that everybody would notice, so that you can take a check. Even if you don't have the funds to get an official diagnosis, if you use the strategies, especially multisensory learning strategies, your kids, your students, your child, your children, they will benefit tremendously. Right now, this child who was really struggling, she reads a ton. She loves stories, and she is such an awesome artist. I wish I had brought up one of her drawings to show you. But I had to learn that by recognizing that she did things differently, and it's okay. But even with doing things differently, she could learn to write well. So now she understands a lot more about writing, and her writing is way better than it was, but it took a few years. So that's why I say start early. Standard 3 is the time to really start paying attention if you weren't paying attention before. So with creative writing, the average creative writing classroom, if I ask the question, do you think it engages all learners? I mean, that's like a rhetorical question, right? So I'm just going to move on, because no, it doesn't. It does not, because what we do in the creative writing classroom is that we give students a topic, we tell them write, we discuss that, and then they write, and then we discuss their writing, and then they write, and we discuss their writing. Yeah, so thank you for answering and engaging. And yeah, so reading is huge. And the comment says, reading up about it would benefit the child tremendously. Yes, yes, yes. Reading, parents reading, making sure you understand, children reading to get vocabulary and everything. I can't stress how much the learning improves when students read, because that's how they get information. And someone says no activity engages all learners, and that's a problem. Isn't it? That is a problem, because in Trinidad and Tobago we have inclusive classrooms. And you know what that means, inclusive classrooms? It means that teachers have to engage with students who have diagnosed learning challenges in their classrooms. No child is supposed to be turned away. And so you would have a teacher who might have somebody who is on the spectrum with autism, has some level of dyslexia or ADHD and many other challenges in their classroom. But do we focus on the multisensory learning across the board? No, we don't. We talk about manipulatives and all kinds of things with math, but what do we do when it comes to writing? We pay attention to the grammar and we tell students read. But do you know that there are some students who read a lot and they still can't translate it to the writing? Why is that? Because they're not being taught the skills and they're not being introduced to the writing concepts in ways that are enjoyable for them, so that they're not interested. And so the thing is, what we really need to look at are the different learning styles. But I'll tell you something about learning styles. Looking at the learning styles is not so that you can teach to a child's preferred learning style. Looking at learning styles is so that you can understand that there are multiple ways of doing things. Because research really does not support the fact that, if you teach to a particular learning style, then the child will benefit better, or the adult. It doesn't quite work like that. So what happens is that all learning happens through multiple senses, and that's what we have to focus on, the multiple senses. Because think about it, that's how life happens. When you learn something, what do you learn? How do you receive the information? Like even in this presentation, you're receiving this presentation through multiple senses right now. So you're hearing my voice and you're seeing the slides. So immediately we have the auditory and the visual. Now, in a typical lesson, I would probably have you do some stuff where you get the movement and other things, but we get, we got the information through our senses. That's how we learn about the world around us. And right now, let's say, for example, there's a smell in the area that is being lodged with the information about my voice and what's happening in this session. Whatever you're eating, all of that is coming in. If you're eating, I know it's almost lunchtime, maybe you're having a snack or an early lunch, but the idea is that you are engaging all your senses. I mean, can you turn off any of your senses? I mean, deliberately. I guess we could close our eyes. We could probably cover our ears, maybe hold our nose. Um, Touch is one that we really can't turn off, but we could probably try not to touch certain things. But even just to close, fabric on your skin. Students are sensitive to these things. Students with learning challenges, all of these things interrupt learning. And I never knew about this. Little things irritate. Like I'm very sensitive to smells, and FYI, ADHD, not diagnosed, but self-diagnosed, officially, but in adulthood. And then it made sense. All the things that I do and don't do started to make so much sense to me. And had I known these things before, I would have just used the systems and strategies. Now I'm using it, and it's like somebody turned on the lights suddenly. So I live it every day. So like certain things, for example, I don't wear socks. I know that's TMI, but I don't wear socks because the feel of the socks on my feet irritate me. And when I wear socks, if I have to for whatever reason, it irritates me and it distracts me. And I wear polo shirts. I don't wear anything that comes up to my neck because it distracts me, it irritates me. There's certain fabrics, if I feel them on my skin, I can't concentrate. I can't think, I can't function. And children experience these things. I've always experienced these things, even from a toddler. But, mommy, I don't like this, it's scratchy. You have to wait, I buy it. That's the attitude we take. It looks nice, don't worry about it. Suffer for the sake of fashion. No, not me. I don't do that anymore because it's not as simple as simply wearing the shoes that looks good. If my feet are irritated, I can't concentrate, I can't learn, I can't function, I can't do anything. It's almost as if my brain is so occupied with this irritation that it begins to shut down for everything else. So we have to pay attention to these things as parents and recognize and listen when the kids tell us little things irritate them and so on. I mean, we could push through some stuff, but when it comes to learning, why are we teaching children that they have to suffer to learn? Learning should be fun. So we also have to think about emotions and movement. When we think about learning through our senses, we think five senses, yeah? The ones that I had before, we think about these five senses. But do we think about the other senses? If you do a quick search, you'd realize that there are more than five senses. Five senses are the ones that we choose to focus on because we think those are the easy ones for the kids to learn and whatnot. But movement as part of life is understood. We kind of take it for granted. You get up, you walk. If you don't have legs, you use crutches or a wheelchair, but you move. That is something that is part of life. And when we are not able to move, it affects our life. And so if you want to think about how serious a matter that is, think about what happened during the COVID lockdown, when we could not move in the way that we wanted to, get out of our houses and go places and, be free with movement. When we were restricted, people suffered tremendously during that time. And we're still feeling the fallout of that because movement was restricted. That's how serious it is. I mean, quite aside from the fact that if you don't move, muscles atrophy and all those things, and you're not able to be limber, and you're not as flexible and energetic if we don't move. So moving is an integral part of who we are and what we do as human beings. And then emotions. Someone mentioned in the chat, yeah, emotions are really, really strong. And we think about students have to learn certain things, but if we change our thinking about learning from have to toward more of I get to and they get to, it's a privilege. It is a privilege, but they shouldn't be beaten over the head. Hey, it's a privilege and you have to do this. No, it's a matter of you get to do this, so enjoy it. And which is why I keep coming back to that whole concept of learning can be fun. Learning about writing can be fun. So let's get a quick definition of multisensory learning. Let's start to wrap our minds around this a little bit, and then I'll show you what it looks like generally in a classroom, and then I'll talk a little bit more about what I do in my classrooms. So multisensory learning is about using more than one sense while taking in new information. That's one aspect of it, because we're working in a situation where we have to, I guess, verify learning, double check, make sure students are getting it. Then we can add to this that multisensory learning includes producing information through more than one sense, which is where writing and creative writing really falls short. Many teachers engage with students in terms of how they present the information. So they do all kinds of activities in the classroom. We watch videos, we play games, and so on, and the classrooms are engaging. But then when it comes to the child demonstrating what they know, you sit down and do a test and you write. That's the only way for you to demonstrate what you know. But that's not how life is. That is so not how life is. We receive and express ideas through multiple senses all the time. But especially with writing and expressions of writing and expressing ideas in a creative writing classroom, we restrict that expression of ideas. So what we're looking at is moving things beyond just the reading, writing. We want to we involve sight, and we're involving sight in different ways from just seeing words. We want to see other things besides words. We want to integrate the hearing. We want to integrate smell. And I have some really awesome activities, especially with the standard threes, because standard three, like I said, is where students are mature enough to really engage with some of these things. And I teach the standard three students about each of these different senses. And the reason it's important for them to recognize is so that they could be more proactive and engaged with their learning, because they get to choose. They are participating in this whole learning process. We're not opening their brain and, shoving in information that we want them to know. They have to participate in the process for it to be as meaningful as possible. So we go through, I teach them, and I teach them the technical words. I just put the regular words here, but I teach them sight is visual imagery, hearing is auditory imagery, smell is olfactory, taste is gustatory, movement is kinesthetic, touch is oh, I forget what touch is. In communication, we call touch haptics, but that's not what we mean. Touch tactile, right? Tactile imagery, and then emotions and sensations come under organic imagery. And so I go through this with all the students, because here's what we actually have to teach them to be aware of what's happening when they are learning. And guess what that does? It helps them with comprehension, and it helps them with the descriptive writing. So that program for standard threes is really about comprehension and descriptive writing, especially comprehension with the fiction. Because with nonfiction, we can teach you strategies, literal versus inferential question, how to respond to each. But then when it comes to interpreting a fictional piece, and you're talking about mood and all these things, how do you recognize that? By paying attention to the sensory words. And how do you recognize the sensory words if you don't know what they are and what they mean and how they go through things? So that's where we begin with standard threes, teaching them that. We want children to look at a picture and write about it, but do we teach them how to analyze that photo? We probably don't. We assume that they can recognize it. But hey, we're dealing with some students who have different strengths, different ways to learn. And so we have to engage multiple senses and actually show them. Because remember, when you're a child, if you think back, and even now with me, I recognized my ADHD about 2 years ago. I'm in my 40s. It took me over 40 something years to figure out that, hey, I have a challenge that I can get help with if I recognize it. Children wouldn't know. The average person doesn't know. You actually have to, from the outside, pay attention. So for those of us who know, it's our duty, it's our responsibility to care for others by sharing as much as possible. So we have all these senses, and yes, they are senses. If you do a search, some people recognize 7, some people recognize 8 senses, and we're not talking about that sixth sense. We're talking about movement, for example. One of the words used to describe movement is vestibular sense. There's another one starting with P that it's such a challenge to pronounce. I never pronounce it. I think it's proprioceptor or something like that. But we don't need to get into the technical things. But if you want, you could search it up. Actually, I believe I have a site. What I'll do, I'll put it up in the chat. Just look for 7 senses. There's actually an organization called 7 Senses. Right? So you want to look, let's look for 7 senses, and it will come up with the 7 Senses organization or something like that, and they give you 7. There are others who do 8, like I said, but you can start with these basic ones, right? But the idea is it's more than five. So we need to engage more than five. Now, a true multisensory lesson engages students in all learning styles and encourages use of as many senses as possible. Now, we're not looking at like one individual aspect of a lesson. Remember, a lesson has seven parts. You have not seven parts, has several sections to it. Um, we have the induction where you get the students interested, and then you go through different steps in the lesson, and then you have teacher led, and then student led, and then you have checking in, and then you have the reinforcement and all those things. So there are different parts of a lesson. So the idea is that you're using the different parts of the lesson um, to engage with different senses. And of course, if you could get multiple senses engaged in one section, that is awesome. But you're also looking at the bigger picture where you're engaging at different points in time and, using different, different aspects of it. So what does that look like in creative writing? So these are the areas. So there are kind of like five areas where we kind of group the senses, but these are the things that you would want to engage in. And in all classes, but I'm specifically talking about multisensory learning in the creative writing classroom because that's my main area of expertise and the area where it falls short the most. Someone asked if I'll be sharing the slides. Not really the slides, but the videos are recorded and you can access the videos at any time. So the videos are recorded on my Facebook page with Coach Youth, on my YouTube channel with Coach Limited, on my website, which I'll show you in a little bit how you can access it from the website, as well as in SEA, the Peace-Filled Approach. All right. So you can have access to it and the videos are there. All right. So here's what you would kind of pay attention to in a multisensory perspective, because focusing on these five areas covers all the five senses. So for teachers, when you're planning a lesson, it might seem kind of tedious, but guess what? You only have to really take the time to prepare that once. And take what I'm telling you. Once you get that once and you're using it, you make modifications here and there depending on the class and the students. But remember, multisensory learning targets all students. It engages all students because you're not focusing on, auditory, or you're not focusing on tactile. You're not focusing on any kinesthetic or, any particular learning style. You're engaging all of them. So you're less likely to have to redo an entire lesson when you do this, because you're going to be targeting all students and getting all students engaged at some point. They might not be engaged at every single step of the process, but they will be engaged at multiple steps in the process. And that is what's going to be most inclusive. So I actually advocate multisensory learning in all classrooms for all subjects, so that is what really creates an inclusive classroom. You cannot have an inclusive classroom without multisensory learning for everyone. We talk about inclusion, but then what do? We have the class, and then when there's a student who has a learning challenge, that student goes over there with a tutor or with an aide. And we always have to keep them separate by doing things with separately. The idea of inclusion is to make people feel, we want them to feel included and part of society. Multisensory learning does that for the classroom, and it shows the other students, those who are considered mainstream, who have no diagnosed challenges, that they can include others with disabilities. So I think multisensory learning in the classroom actually solves quite a lot of the issues that we have. And it is going to make our society much more inclusive, so that when our architects decide to construct buildings, they are naturally going to think about inclusion. When our teachers and other aspects, they would naturally think inclusion. When our businesses create packaging and whatnot, they would naturally think inclusion. And so this is how we really impact society, by teaching each other that inclusion can be done and we don't have to have that separation, right? So drama and movement in a creative writing classroom. I actually have students dramatize the like for plot. When we're dealing with plot, they do dramatizations of the plot structure. At one point, I had them, doing a song and doing movements and all those things. So that's definitely doable because I do it in my sessions. So I'm not telling you something that I've read somewhere and I think it works. The students are engaged. Science and engineering, I do lots of scientific experiments with my classes. So that, again, with plot, because that's where we always begin, um, there's an experiment that we do with plot, rising action, which is huge, climax. There's an experiment we do for report writing. When we talk about the structure of a report, there's an activity that we do that's a more engineering style one. So we do multiple activities that engage with students and the different, aspects of writing. It's a structured program to make it as accessible as possible. Drawing and art, I have students respond using art. Um, they have questions and activities. And I'm going to show you something that I'm working on with a colleague of mine. Fingers crossed that we get it done, where we're supposed to finish off at least one of the booklets this week. Hopefully the others, because we're using a template and filling in. But when I show you, you'd understand. I'll explain. It's a little bit involved when you're dealing with multisensory learning. And that's one of the things that I recognize. We need more resources that truly engage multisensory learning. It's nice for me to tell you do this, but then how do you do it? I'd love to show you how. I do offer training for teachers and parents in teaching and engaging students with multisensory learning. But then I started advertising this year, but then I pulled back because I want that when you do the class, you have access to resources and you don't necessarily have to create everything yourself, because that can get tedious after a while. So I'm working on a lot of things to help with that. Rhythm and sounds, like I said, movement, we listen. One of the activities that I do with students, and the first couple of times I do it, parents are like, what? But I ask students to think about the colors and the sounds that they would associate with certain concepts. So like when I teach different types of stories, um, I explain to students how to recognize and understand the elements required to write a good mystery. So we do mysteries and thrillers, thriller and suspense, the realistic fiction, science fiction, folklore and folktale, and there are two others I don't remember, but you get the point. Um, I asked them to, for example, a mystery. Find a song that when you hear it, you think mystery and mysterious. And then what color would you associate with that? Sometimes I have them draw as well, but usually they just identify a color. And it's really fascinating. Now, there's no wrong answer and there's no right answer. What students learn in that activity is that things are multisensory and that they have to look beyond just the thing. And that reminds me of The Lion King. Look beyond what you see. But it's literally that you have to look beyond words, because meaning is not in words. And I did an article on that, words, things, and ideas. I'll put a link to that at some point. Somebody remind me, please. But we tell a student that a word is a noun, but a word is not a noun. A word functions as a noun in a sentence. That is why we call it part of speech. You need to have the speech in order for you to figure out how the word is used and how it functions in that sentence. And I actually teach my standard threes that. It might sound like this lofty, fanciful concept that the kids won't get, but they get it. And this is how you really get them to understand context clues and, deciphering meaning, because they understand how words work. And that's important. We can't just assume that they would get it. We have to teach them, give them the strategies that they can use to understand how words work. So yeah, what's the color of mystery stories? What's the color of sci-fi? And what that does is it gets students using their imagination, activating that critical and creative thinking aspect of their brains. Lots of parents and teachers ask, how do you teach critical and creative thinking? This is how: multisensory learning, because you're having students look at any situation from multiple perspectives. Critical and creative thinking. So, and of course, it's a writing class. We want to write some, put the words together, etc., etc. So, the most effective learning strategies engage head, heart, and hand. And for those of you who are my age and older, you would recognize this whole concept of head, heart, and hand. It's not pushed as much in schools anymore. You would more get it in, religious organizations, but it's still not as prolific as it used to be. But that's multisensory learning, head, heart, and hand. All the senses, all the thinking, critical thinking, the emotions, and then the hand would be the movement, etc., etc. So it's really something that we have to pay attention to and be deliberate about. And it's way more fun than you might think. I mean, I tell my students, if I can't have fun in my classes, then I'm not doing it, because I have to teach this thing every week, every year, every term. And I am not suffering through any class for anybody. I can tell you that, right? So, and then when I have fun, the kids have fun. It makes learning enjoyable. And it gets students curious and wanting to learn on their own. And let me tell you something, the minute you get a child so engaged, they start begging you to do things with them. More than 80% of your challenge is done. That is it. You have hit the jackpot, because that child is going to keep learning and growing and developing way beyond what you have to offer them. Right? So definitely get into this. So just a quick look at what I do in some of my classrooms. This was a workshop I did 2019. I haven't done any face-to-face workshops in a while. I'm thinking of resuming it. If that's something that you think I should do, I'd look into it, because the workshop would be like a week long. So I might do it for like next year, because right now I'm focusing on creating the materials for you. But yeah, let me know in the chat, message me if it's something that you think I should do again. So here we were learning about the parts of the story in this one. And we were going through the actions of, the introduction. And with this one, we were beating out the rhythm of a poem. And I know poetry is something that a lot of students struggle with. I'm working on something for that. I'll give you a sneak peek just now. But we were tapping out the rhythm of a poem. And, so students would sort of get into the mood and understand what it's like, what the mood of the poem was based on the rhythm and so on. And this one was noisy, but a lot of fun. These photos we were looking at. So this first one, we were exploring tactile imagery. and going through some vocabulary words. With this one, we were looking at the plot development. And in this last one, this was actually for report writing. This, we were talking about passive voice when we did this activity. It's an origami caterpillar. It's really cool. You could probably search it up. Excuse me. It's you just fold up the paper and you do some cut. Very, very simple for young kids to do, as long as they can handle a scissors. And the cool thing about the origami caterpillar is when you put it up, it kind of stands up and you blow on it and it goes up and down and moves forward. Very cool stuff. I do this with my report writing students. Here this one was for report writing. We're looking at the structure of reports. This one we were exploring, this is something that the standard 3s do. We were exploring smells. So we had our smells to explore and we had our worksheet. This is tactile imagery, also something I do with standard 3s, but I do it with the standard 4s as well in order to help them recognize about descriptive writing and all the different senses, so that one activity, one action can have multiple senses addressed. And then as a writer, you choose which one works best for the situation you're writing about. And so we do a lot of exploring, investigating, creating when we explore. So here we were looking for mood and tone and identifying things in different reading. This one we were looking at plot, we were looking at hooks, and here, well, the students are producing some writing after we've gone through a lot of the stuff that we were working on. So, all right. So that's kind of the overview of what I do, why I do it, and so on. And so let me share with you some of the resources that I'm working on, and so that you can get an idea of what to look forward to. So I'm going to share my website page. I'll put the link in the chat. Did I just close it off? Yes, I did. All right. Yeah, I'm gonna have to open it back. I'm trying to minimize I'm one of those people that have like a million tabs open, so I was trying to minimize some of the tabs, and I close it off. So, all right. Share screen, and okay, how do we do this? Make sure you see everything. Just give me one. Well, not 1 second because I kind of passed already, but all right. So now I can share screen, and I'll show you what I have. Okay, so the Journey to SEA videos that I do, I started April this year. This is technically episode 17, but it's a special episode, so it's not really like part of this schedule. I'm going to be doing episode 17 next week. So all of the videos, so if you go to Journey to SEA on my website, you would find all the information. So all the videos are there, starting with episode 1, which gives an overview and everything. And then episode 16 is the last one. There's study schedules. If you want to get a copy of the study schedules, submit your email and then you can get a copy. But I also have available the SEA past papers, and I have them from 2019. So I know people are always looking for the past papers. Just a second, let me see if I could. Right, so yeah, so there they are, and you just click on them and you download them. So the past papers are all there in one place, and as we get, I would be adding, so all the past papers would be there. I have the solutions. Now, what I did, I had done this before, and originally I had made them available in the groups, but it's like nobody knew where to find them, and I kept like adding stuff. So what I've done is I'm making them available. There's a small cost to it, because what I've done is that what you'd be getting is like two things. I have the answers to the complete past paper. So if you would get like the whole 2019 ELA answers, and I put explanations next to each response. So for the I could, let me see, I'll show you one of them so that you'd get an idea of what I mean by having, multiple, the explanations. Um, I realized that, you really learn best when you understand how and why with certain things. It's not just being told what to do. You kind of like have to be shown. So, all right, I'm gonna just change and show you the screen with the exam. All right, so this is the 2019 paper. And so this is just one section. So you have the error, what's the correction, and an explanation. And so knowing the error and what the error is about helps students, because it shows them, what are the areas that they would need to focus on. And so I did that for all of it, even the comprehension and the poetry and everything, giving some explanations about why the answers are suggested the way they are. And so you get a lot of details, but not only do you get that, for the whole exam, what I also did was to put it according to sections. So you would get a document with all the poetry in one place, the answers. You would get a document with all the grammar in one place by itself. And what that does is that it allows you to kind of study the way the exams are prepared and get a good sense of what areas are covered. So it gives you that edge in terms of preparation. So you're not just looking at questions and answers. You're looking at the structure of the exam. You're looking at how best to be able to prepare students and so on. So that is available to you, and you can, access, you can WhatsApp me, you can send me an email, because of course, as you can imagine, it's going to be emailed to you. So I'd need a valid email to send it to you if this is something that you're interested in. All right. All right. Sorry for like stopping. But let me go back to showing you a couple of the other resources. And then we would get to the one that I'm really excited about, which is what I'm working on. So on my website, so you have the Journey to SCA, you have access to these things. The courses that I have available, they're up, registration is open. So standard 3s, standard 4s, standard 5s, report writing and narrative writing taught separately for 4s and 5s. And with standard 3s, we're doing the exploring imagery, and that's a year program, right? So term 1, 2, and 3, and we cover. If you click on any of the tabs, what you get is you get a registration form, you get a breakdown of what's going to happen during the term, so you know exactly what we're covering on what day. And if you want to get like the overall view of what's going on, click here and you'd get a document that has each term all the dates and an explanation of how the class is going to be taught, so you know ahead of time what you're getting into. And all of the programs have that. So for the standard fours, you have the breakdown and you have the click here for all the details. And for standard fives, it's a two-part program. So you're getting, so this is term one, and then, well, we're taking off this. I'm actually contemplating doing a third part for standard fives, but this would be more like a preparation for form one something. So I left it in here, but it's really preparation for SA 24. We're going up to March 24, right? And then on the resources, here is where you get some additional things. So I do have the textbook completed for report writing. I don't have the narrative writing text yet, but reports are done. And this is something that you can get if you get the series. You can work on your own, following the lives, and get get the details that you need. So what I would recommend, um, if you're thinking about working with your child, or even for teachers working with students, I have the series where you get a textbook, which is this one, right? So there's a textbook, then you get a practice booklet with follow-on activities that you could use after you go through the material here. And then there's a journal that helps extend the writing and so on outside of the classroom. Because remember, we're working with multisensory learning, which means that you're going beyond what's happening just with the words. We have to go and do some further things. And the way the program is structured, that's what I teach in my class. But of course, if you have the books at home, you can follow on. And I don't give the same activities in terms of what's in the book. Of course, I give different ones. So you can do your own practice and whatnot. But there's an experimental activity to begin each lesson, and then there's a description, then there's a worksheet and follow-up for each of the topics. For the narrative writing, let's go to the store. I'll come back to these after. So this is the series. So you get the 3 books for $3.95. And that could be delivered to you, or you could pick it up at my office in Curepe. It's not exactly available in bookstores. I'm contemplating it because this is something that I really want engagement with, so that I can support you. It's not just that, okay, you buy the books and you're on your own. You can check in with me, ask questions, and of course, you're following along with the lives, so you get those details as well. For the narrative writing, one of the main things that students struggle with is plot. And so I've created a system that they can use, and I have a poster, the 12-point plot development, and to assist, there's some flashcards that you have, each point in the plot spoken about with details. There's an experiment, there's some worksheets available. That one is $2.45, and you get detailed explanation about how to develop the plot and why it's important. And of course, posters and flashcards, they help a lot for reinforcement. And again, not yet available in stores because I'm selecting maybe 1 or 2 stores where you can pick up mainly. But I do want that, I'm not just, okay, buy this and it'll be, you're done with it. You can, you're checking in with the lives, you're working with me, you're sending me messages. So you're getting that support, to have that information where you can get things done. And back to the resources, let's see. So after you do the foundation, and with the 12-point and whatnot, I have a series that gives, this is for advanced level students. This is digital. So when you purchase, I send you an email with these booklets. There are 11 in all, that help you develop further understanding of the different aspects of the narratives. And if you want to get an idea of what's in it, you can download the introductory booklet so you can get all the details and see what it looks like before you make the purchase. I also have that same thing for reports, and this would be, again, the booklets, excuse me, and we focus on each of the different types of reports. There's the introductory booklet. We talk about self-marking, we talk about formal tone, revising and editing, and the ones for narratives. And again, you can download the introductory booklet so you can get a really good idea of what the booklets would look like. With this one, narratives, we cover strategies for creating vivid description, revising and editing, self-marking, analyzing prompts, and so on. So these go into a lot of detail, but they're really designed for students who are not new to the concepts, because it goes beyond just introducing the concepts. There are sample stories, sample reports, so that you can have that information. So the website, I think someone asked about the website. The website is actually wordcoach.com. So you can find wordcoach.com online, and you'd be able to access all of these resources. And so, a lot of it is there. But of course, if you want, you can WhatsApp 717-4993. That's my number. It comes directly to me. Sometimes my assistant responds as well. But that's the shortest way to get direct contact. And email would be contact@wordcoach.com for the information as well. So these are the ways that you can get in contact with me. And like I said, I am a writing instructor, writing coach. So I work with authors and academic writers as well, not just the primary school students. But right now I'm putting in some resources where that's concerned. All right, so last two things before I go. Ooh, we're over an hour. My intention wasn't to stay this long. But last two things before I go. These are the two that I'm way excited about, and I left them for last. Oh my goodness. I hope, those who were on earlier can come back and check it out. So my colleague and I are working on some spelling booklets. Now, for the first presentation, they're going to be digital, but then yeah, I put the WhatsApp number back on the screen. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we're working on a multisensory approach to teaching the spelling, and I know spelling is an issue. And while I focus on the writing per se, of course, spelling and grammar, those are huge parts of writing. But we can't teach all at the same time. We have to do it in compartments. So we're creating these resources. And it's 3 to 5. The student doesn't have to be a standard 5 student or standard 3 student. Spelling, we learn spelling right through. And the way it's going to work is that we have these focus areas. And for the first series that we're doing, it's going to be a total of 6 or 7 booklets. We'll be focusing on the consonant blends, particularly endings, and words that students can learn with these consonant blend endings. All right, and each booklet would have a focus Like here, this is the booklet number one. We're focusing on the FLE and PLE endings. And so I know one of the words would be ruffle, for example, and how it's going to work. Students are going to be engaging with it, so there'd be things that you can print and cut out. There would be things students would be drawing, there'd be comprehension, movement, activities, lots of different things that really show the multisensory way to engage students with learning spelling. And each booklet, so like this one, each booklet would have 10 words. So 5 FLE words, 5 PLE words, and then it's meant to be, used over the course of a week. So over the course of 12 weeks, a student should be exposed to 120 words, and not just exposed to the words. They would know how to spell them, how to write using them, and how to recognize them and understand them when they read, because that's how you get students to understand how words work and be able to use them and recognize them effectively, engaging through all of it. So I'm particularly excited about this, and I'm getting help with it, so it's going to come out sooner rather than later, for sure. And the other thing that I'm working on that I am super excited about, this one was meant to be a book, but the book is taking a bit longer. And then, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to turn it into a course for now, so that you don't have to wait until the book comes out to get the information. But you're still going to have access to it, and eventually I'm going to get the book out. So this is mainly for standard 4s and 5s. I'm going to do it as a course that you can purchase and go through with recordings and all those things. I'm not necessarily going to be doing it as a class right now, but I'll do it as a recorded session. But of course, once you're engaged, you have access to me. You can, send me messages, contact, and so on. So how to study a poem, exploring poetry comprehension. We're going to be, so this would be me as instructor. I have a friend who's a poet. I don't know if you heard of him. His name is Kieran Isaac. We're collaborating on this. So I have an actual poet on board. I mean, yes, I do write poetry, but somebody besides me who's going to be working with the program to really give their background information. So when students go through this, they're not just going through it from this perspective of, studying something from out there and these strange and weird things. They're engaging with an actual writer, with actual writers, not just teachers, so that they can really understand poetry and understanding it, and how to respond effectively to the different aspects of the poetry. So you can look out for that as well. So yeah, I have taken up way more of your time than planned, and because of my my thinking, I'm saying it's an hour and 13 minutes, so we can round it off to maybe an hour and 15 minutes. I'll close off at that point. But I'm really excited about this term and the materials that I would be making available to you, and I'm genuinely looking forward to getting your feedback. Tell me what you need, resources that you would like to see, and my team and I would add it to the agenda, because the entire purpose of doing all of this is so that you can really understand and get the support that you need. I didn't quite get to this schedule, but you can actually access the schedule on the website. As I showed you, you can go to Journey to SEA 2024, download the schedules, and then you'd be able to, see what the schedule looks like. And certainly next week, I'm going to go through the schedule next week. So if you're not too familiar and you want to, figure out what's what, come back next week, and we'll talk more about specifically report writing and narrative writing as we resume the whole focus. But today was a day for me to share with you who I am, Shelley-Ann Edwards-Barran, creative writing specialist. Why I do what I do? Because I believe multisensory learning is the way forward and it really helps everyone concerned, and the types of resources that you can have access to. So thank you so much for your time and for your comments. Someone asked anything to help with comprehension skills. In general, comprehension, not yet. However, for standard 3 students, if the child is in standard 3, then the exploring imagery, that entire program is on comprehension. But for the let's see, comprehension. Get a copy of the solutions to the ELA, because those give, when I did the comprehension answers, I give explanations of what the answers are and why they are that particular way. Exemplars. I'm looking, let me bring it up and I'll give you an example. All right, since you asked the question, I'll give you an example. I'll share my screen in a bit. All right, so let's go down to the comprehension. Right, so this is 2019. So here are the answers, and then there's an explanation. Let's see. Right, and here's an explanation as well. So these are the answers, and students would have to know the meaning of these words and apply them to the context. Mission also includes purpose, the main point, and you can get, so you get some details on, what answers are appropriate and what answers might not be. And so you get some explanation, right? And so that would help with understanding the comprehension, because it allows you to see how to create answers effectively and some of the reasoning behind it. There's a question on the courses. Yes, so each course is $850, and that would be for the term, altogether 11 sessions, right? So the courses I teach as a set program, so the 11 sessions for the term, and each session is recorded so that you would have access to it until the end of the year, right? So, and then next term, the sessions would be recorded and you would have access to it until the end of the term period. So you get like 3 months access, except for the September term, you get like about 4 months access to it. But altogether, yeah, about 3 months roughly, you get access to the recordings. So you get the recordings, you would get the materials and so on. So I'm working on, so the question is for ELA. I teach ELA, but only for one-on-one students. I don't generally do ELA as a group class. That is primarily because of needing, creating additional resources. So with a one-on-one student, I can identify whatever the student's challenge is, and I can work with that. Challenges with comprehension on a broad scale, I think if a child is having challenges with comprehension, then what they might need is a one-on-one. Otherwise, comprehension is kind of more like a practice. Now, standard 3s, like I said, that's where I do that comprehension work, where we study different types of questions. how to respond to poetry, how to respond to fiction and nonfiction. We do all of that, but I do that at the standard 3 level at this point. So I don't have advanced classes. So I am going to get to there, but for now, like I said, I want to focus on creating resources for the spelling. That's a huge one. When I'm finished with those, we're going to be doing resources for grammar, same kind of booklets and so on. So I'm trying to build, the resource bank where you can get booklets and get worksheets and get things that you could work with students and your children. So, all right. So yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, time to go. Time to go. I could talk about this forever, and I know you have questions. Message me. I'm gonna check back. You can WhatsApp me. You can, send me a message on Messenger. I'm going to respond as quickly as I can to share the information with you. But this is who I am. This is what I do. And if you can, I would love to see you for the live next week, Tuesday. And we're continuing with the Journey to SEA 2024. So have a wonderful rest of today, everyone. And I look forward to seeing you again. Okay? All right. Bye-bye.